Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the program. Today we got a twofer, just two smaller articles talking about the same area, which is the ancient Mayans. And the Mayan period is pretty, in terms of mainstream history, it's pretty short, although it's suggested that they've gone further back with other discoveries and other hypotheses and stuff and genetic evidence and such. The Mayans themselves, strictly, they're attributed to about, the earliest is what they're called different types of periods. So the oldest Mayan period is about 2800 BC or 2600 BC, around there, and that's the start of what's called the pre-classic period of Mayan civilization. And so that goes on for, I don't know, about almost 3,000 years, 2,000 something years. And then they suddenly collapse, and then they're replaced with the classic period, basically, of Mayans. And they're known for like the large networks and huge urbanization and all that stuff. So that's the time period we're talking about here in both of these articles. So this comes out of Albuquerque. I'll have it. I think it's Live Science, but I'm not sure. I'll have it in the episode notes or in the link below. Archaeologists working in Guatemala have discovered the largest known figurine workshop in the Mayan world. So they figured out that they were mass producing these figurines, and that is a telltale sign of a few things that I don't think is groundbreaking, but it's pretty interesting that it goes back more than 1,000 years, which it was buried. They found it buried 1,000 years, and I don't know how long it was operating before then, but that would place it in the time actually a little bit after that urbanization period, or that the classic period. But still, it's pretty interesting. It still might, though. It was just buried in the period after, so it might be a relic from that, I guess, the one of the more ancient periods in Mayan civilization history. The workshop made intricate and mass-produced figurines that likely figured heavy into Mayan political customs. So they found, basically, this is one of those sites where they found the remains of this place on construction. They were doing construction on their property, and then the archaeologists were called in, and they excavated the site, which is now called Aragon, and surveyed it with a drone. The workshop was destroyed by the construction, but the archaeologists were still able to recover more than 400 fragments of figurines and molds for making them, as well as thousands of ceramic pieces, more than at any other known Mayan workshop. So, again, this is probably a site for, there are probably a lot of people coming through there. It seems like they're like a high volume figurine workshop. So that must mean, again, used for political reasons. It was a highly influential in some capacity, and the figurines played a key role in Mayan politics and economics, which is why they probably mass-produced in the first place, to spread influence. It's thought that leaders gave them to allies and subjects to strengthen and publicize important relationships, right? Spreading influence, developing reputation, getting allies, and all that stuff. And it was probably active between 750 to 900. So yeah, that's right at the tail end of the classic Mayan period, long before archaeologists thought there was an important city in the region. So they didn't even know that there was anything going on in this, which, by the way, is around here, like kind of smack dab in the middle of Guatemala, or like in the northeastern part anyway, a few miles north of Guatemala City. So at that time, archaeologists didn't know anything was going on there. They just thought it was just peaceful villages or something like that. And then it survived. Not only did it survive, but it thrived after that period, which was this 3-century long collapse around the Mayan world. So about 900, I think from 980 to about 1200, there was chaos going on, kind of like the Warring Kingdoms or something like that in China. But I don't even think there's that much details, as much as the Warring Kingdoms anyway, because it just collapsed. Same thing with the pre-classic period, it just collapsed, and there's not much, according to the mainstream anyway, there's not much that proves otherwise. That means Aragon could hold important clues about how political and economic power transformed over that long and sometimes painful transition. So yeah, if they're burying workshops, it must have been some sort of revolt, some sort of takeover. I know at around 300 AD, Teotihuacan was basically going around to the surrounding cities and subjugating their top people and replacing them with their own leaders that supported themselves. And that happened to the Mayan in about 370 AD or something like that. And then from there, the Mayans were under that, I guess you can call it dynasty or whatever, that were loyal to this outside force. So maybe something like that was going on. Maybe it was sickness, bad weather, who knows. But it does seem like if you're burying workshops and such, then you probably have an enemy that you're trying to get rid of. Okay, so the second article is about the skeletons of a 1,500-year-old Mayan monarchs. So again, this would take place about 200 or 150, 200 years after this. I don't know if you would call it a coup d'etat, but there was some sort of violent takeover where the Mayan king, I forget his name, was killed, and a new guy was installed. And so this is about 150, 200 years after that. And so these group of researchers, again in Guatemala, they find the skeletons of a man and a woman who would have been kings of the Mayan civilization. The remains could be approximately 1,500 years old and were found in the funerary chambers of one of 3 pyramids of the archaeological city of Holmol, located in the Guatemalan jungle. They probably found it with the lidar, I bet. And this is what Francisco Estrada says about this site. And you guys tell me in the comments what you think about this. We're pretty sure he's a king because we have this big vase with the name of a very important king from a nearby city that controlled this one. And he adds that only the monarchs of civilization could possess such objects. Okay, so I guess this big vase is a very, very either sacred or it's a significant item that not just anyone will have. You have to be part of the monarchy or the monarch themselves, according to Estrada. So I don't know. He posted something on Twitter, like a video of the site, and then he also posted something else, I think another picture. The bones were found next to the skull of a child, apparently sacrificed, and other valuable objects that suggest the prominent status of these persons. Okay, so they're sacrificing children for them. So yeah, they must have been very important. The discovery was made to lidar, yes, a laser device that detected 60,000 structures from pyramids to entire cities located deep in the dense Guatemalan jungle. So yeah, 60,000 structures, including pyramids and networks of cities. Yeah, these monarchs were definitely, or whoever was in charge, they weren't just in charge of like a small kingdom or whatever. This is a huge, sprawling area at the time. Now it's a jungle, but I don't think it was a jungle at the time. So again, that it must have been a metropolis. So these, at one point in time in history, these people were very, very significant, and they're very popular according to what they were found with. I don't know if it's exactly the kings though. It doesn't say their names or anything like that, but just the lidar alone just makes it incredible. And so I think this is a photo. This is on Twitter, but this is a PDF file, so I can't play this. But this was a promotion, I guess a promo, of the capabilities of lidar, and you can see that there's a construction there, and underneath all of this again is jungle. So it looks like a desert, but it's not. Thus, it was determined that the ancient civilization was much more complex and interconnected than most Maya scholars assumed. Yeah, because they didn't know anything. They couldn't go by anything. They didn't have lidar. So how could they have known? And also, they didn't find a monarch, allegedly monarch. The specialists also visited previously unknown pyramids located outside the city of Huitzna, north of the Central American country. In the area, they found signs of attacks perpetrated on the site, buildings destroyed, burned, and monuments with images of disfigured kings, suggesting a high level of conflict for centuries. So again, this would probably be around this area, I think. Well, anyway. So yeah, they find signs of attacks on the site. So when we compare it to the workshop story, or the article rather, that dates to around 750 to like 900 AD. That's where the site was probably functional. And if that's true, then yeah, this place has a long history of violence and such, and images of disfigured kings. So there's a lot of propaganda going on, a lot of a struggle, a huge conflict between different types of powers. seeking influence. So again, it's just interesting that they keep finding these monarchs, and that the Mayans have such a. It's interesting. The Mayans have such not shallow, but the history is not as deep in the mainstream, largely because they can't find anything that goes further than that. But what we have is like the lidar data, how big the populations of people must have been in the millions, and that we have these monarchs. What we see of them, there's so much power and so much influence there, and so much just responsibility of all those people that they're managing, that it's surprising that it doesn't go further. Because if you're controlling a population for that long, I mean, that tradition must have been, well, it eventually became unstable, but for a period of time it must have been stable. So just to achieve that alone is just amazing. But yeah, again, eventually it just went unstable, as we see here, and then things got violent. There was a power overthrow, but who knows how much stretch of history we don't have about them where things were kind of prosperous, because it was like that in Egypt. It was like that in all kinds of civilizations as well. So why not them? So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this. If you guys can drop some knowledge about Mayan civilization too, that would be cool. And I'll talk to you guys later.